The Serpent. There was once a man and a woman, a gardener and his wife, who could not bear a child. For years and years they tried to have a child, but they couldn't. The woman, Sapatella, was so frustrated and lamented the fact that she would never be a mother. Cola Matteo, the man, just went about his business doing his job, knowing that sometimes fate had other ideas. One day Cola Matteo was out collecting wood, and when he dropped the faggot of wood down on the ground, out slithered a tiny serpent. Sapatella lamented again, "Oh, even the serpents have babies, and I cannot have a baby at all." And the serpent spoke. "I will be your son, and you can be my mother, just as if you were my real mother," said the serpent. And Sapatella was overjoyed to have a son at last and someone to look after. And she created a beautiful room and beautiful space and fed him great food. And he grew. He grew to be quite a large, man-sized serpent. And when he was fully grown, he said to Cola Matteo, "Papa, I want a wife." And his father said, "Well, of course we will see if we can find a serpent that matches you." "Don't be a dolt," said the serpent. "I want to marry the king's daughter, the princess." Cola Matteo didn't know what to say. After all, his son, he would do anything for him. But he did. He went up to the castle and he waited in front of the king and said to the king, "Please do not punish the messenger." And he told the king that his son, who was a serpent, wanted the hand of the Princess Granonia. The king laughed straight away and then said, "Well, if he can turn all of the fruit trees into gold, or the fruit in the orchard to gold, then he can have my daughter." And then he laughed and dismissed Cola Matteo, thinking that he was quite an idiot. Cola Matteo went back to the serpent and told him what the king had said. And the serpent told his father, "Go into the village and collect all the seeds from apricots and plums and peaches and cherries that you can find and plant them in the orchard. Then that will be done." So Cola Matteo went and collected all the fruit seeds he could find in the village and planted them carefully in the ground in the orchard. And instantly they grew into beautiful trees with luscious golden fruit. So Cola Matteo went to the king and said, "Here, I have done what you have asked. Can your daughter marry my son now?" The king said, "Oh, he couldn't have that happen." He said, "I tell you what, if you can turn all the walls of the orchard into jewels, then you can have my daughter." Cola Matteo shook his head and he went down back to his son and said what had happened. But the serpent said, "Go into the town, collect all the broken bits of pottery that you can find and place them on the walls of the orchard." So Cola Matteo did. He went into the town, he picked up handles of jugs and broken bowls and broken cups and broken vases, and he took them and he placed them on the wall, and they turned into shining jewels of rubies and emeralds, diamonds. And he went to the king to ask for his son's hand to his daughter. And the king was starting to get a bit worried at this point and issued a final challenge. "If you can turn the palace walls into gold, then your son may have my daughter." Cola Matteo went back to the serpent and told the serpent what had happened. The serpent told him to collect herbs of all types, and rub them against the wall of the palace. So So that is what he did. And the moment the herbs touched the wall, they turned into glittering gold. Giambattista went to the king and again said, I have done all that you asked. And the king at this moment had to capitulate. He had to agree to this thing. He called his daughter Granonia and said, Granonia, I have asked 3 impossible tasks to a potential suitor, and he has done them all. I must now honour my promise. And Granonia, who was a strong young woman, as you wish, father. I can see that he's done a lot to get to this far. He didn't tell her, of course, that he was a serpent, but soon the serpent came in a gold carriage ridden on 4 elephants, all jewelled and bedecked, into the village. And villagers, everybody left when they saw this man-sized serpent enter the kingdom and go up the palace steps and knock on the palace door. All the servants disappeared from sight. No one would be around to see this serpent. The king and queen even hid, shaking in their boots. But Granonia stood steadfast, ready to meet her new husband. After the ceremony, the serpent came up behind her and wrapped his tail around her waist and led her into their chamber. As soon as the door was shut, Granonia felt her hand around her waist and didn't feel a tail made of scales, but felt a hand and an arm. And she turned around and saw the most beautiful, handsome man she had ever seen in her life. They spent the evening talking, getting to know each other. And during the night, the king, who was outside pacing back and forth, decided he didn't want to know. He wanted to know what happened to his daughter. He wanted to know if she'd been eaten. So he peeked through the keyhole and he saw a beautiful prince sitting with his beautiful daughter, and on the floor was a snakeskin. He rushed through the door and he picked up the snakeskin and threw it into the fire. "What have you done?" the serpent boy cried. And at once he turned into a dove and tried to fly out the window. And as he hit the window, he hit his head and broke the glass and went out into the night. Granonia was at once both elated that she'd found this beautiful man and they'd made promises to each other, but devastated that he was gone. The king and queen apologised over and over, and of course Granonia eventually forgave them. But in the early hours of the morning, she packed all her jewels in her pocket, took some supplies, jumped the castle fence, and went out to find her beloved. She walked, not knowing where she was going, when she felt someone come up beside her and looked down, and it was a red fox. The red fox asked if she'd like company. "Of course," she said. "I'm going to find my beloved." And so she did. She kept walking and walking, and the fox and her chatted as they went along, until it became the end of the day. They found a soft spot near a fountain to rest their heads and had a really great night's sleep. In the morning, Granonia was awakened by the birds' song. They were whispering and singing and chorusing the start of a new day. "I wish I knew what they were talking about," she said to the fox. "I know. Would you like me to tell you?" he said. "Oh yes, I'd love to know what happened, what they're talking about." The fox said, "Well, they're gossiping mostly about a young prince who was bewitched by an ogre and turned into a serpent for 7 years until he could marry a princess. But the princess's parents found out and burned his skin, and now he's injured and dying in his kingdom with a head injury that no doctor can fix. Granonia heard her own story being told. And she said to the fox, "What is it that I can do? How can I make this right? How can I cure the prince, my beloved?" The serpent said, "Well, you need to kill all of the birds that were gossiping and take their blood into a tincture and apply it to the injury." Granonia wasn't sure what to do about this. It was quite a drastic treatment. "Will you help me?" she said to the fox. The fox said, "Of course. We'll wait till night, and when they're all sleeping, we will get them then." So during the night, the fox slaughtered all the birds, the finches and the blackbirds, all the beautiful feathers falling to the ground, and took their blood, put it in a bottle, which the fox wore around his neck and sustained himself with on occasion. "Ah, that's a relief," said Granonia. "We have a cure for the prince. Oh, cannot wait." And they kept walking towards the castle where the young man would be. The fox said, "But that is not all you need. You need my blood in there as well." Granonia thought to herself, how will I do this? She put on her femininely charms and encouraged the fox to stay with her. And then when he wasn't looking, she took a big stick, hit him on the head, and drained his blood, and added it to the tincture which she then wore around her neck. She made her way to the home of the Serpent Prince, where the whole kingdom was in grief and mourning about what would happen to their young prince. She asked to be admitted and said that she had a cure for the prince that nobody else could do. And the king, seeing that none of his other doctors could do this, allowed her in to see the prince. As soon as she saw him, her heart skipped a beat. And she sat down beside him and said to the king, "Will you promise me his hand in marriage when I cure him?" The king said, "Oh, if you can give me my son back, I will give you anything." So, the Princess Granonia placed the tincture on the wound, and the prince woke up as if nothing had happened. Granonia took a step back into the shadows and let him see his father again. The king was overjoyed to have his son back, and said to his son, "Oh, my son, I have promised you for your cure a beautiful wife." But the prince says, "No, I cannot marry. I am already betrothed. I have already a beautiful, beautiful wife. I cannot marry another, father, and you shouldn't ask me to do that." And Granonia in the background said, what would you do if I could ask her to give you up?" He said, "I would not give her up for all of the world." And that's when Granonia stepped into the light and saw the prince. And he saw her. They were reunited. Of course, there was a large wedding. Matteo was there. Sapatella was there. The prince's parents. And even the old king. And they, of course, lived happily ever after, which is how all fairy tales maybe sometimes end.